In this video, we'll be discussing field mapping in Cobblestone Contract Insight. Field mapping is the process by which information or data is transferred from one record type in Cobblestone to another, one record to another record. We saw this in action in a previous video when we talked about creating a contract or another record from a request. The field and subtable information from the request transferred or mapped over to the new contract record. This is a fairly simple process. We have to tell the system essentially that, hey, a request field, for example, equals this other contract field. Those fields live in different tables in the system, so are therefore different fields entirely, even if they have the same name, like the request contract field to, or the request contract amount field to the contract amount field. We still have to create the field mapping to tell the system that they are synonymous, they're the same thing, and the data should move over accordingly. There are a few field mappings that come out of the box for some out-of-the-box fields, of course, like the contract title and the expiration date and some basic things like that. But certainly, if you want additional fields to map, more data to transfer from your request to contracts or one record to another in general, more field mappings have to be created in the system, especially for user-defined fields that you've created in Cobblestone yourself. And this is sort of a set it and forget it sort of thing, right? You have to set up those field mappings, those connections one time, and then that's it. It will just work automatically going forward until, of course, you want to change it. But still, it's a pretty simple setup, and then you can just leave it alone. So I'm going to go to my main menu to start, then down to Manage Setup, and then down to Account Maintenance. From here, I can go to my side menu, and then down to my field mapper. And the path is pretty straightforward here. I'm going to choose the area of the system, the table I'm coming from, the table the data is transferring to, mapping to, the field I'm coming from, and the field I'm going to. So I'll choose the record I'm coming from. In our example, we'll use a contract request. The data will map over to a contract record. So we'll select contract details. Then all of the existing field mappings that live in my system from request to contracts will populate below. So take a look at those. Make sure you're not inputting a redundant mapping. And I'll simply just choose the information I want to map. We'll go with the address, let's say. So the address from the request can map over to the address on our contract. Right? Even though these fields have the same name, again, they are different fields. One is housed in the request table, the other in the contract table. Then I would just click Add Field Mapping, and it will be added below. So with that one setup, it's taken care of, and it will work automatically going forward. So this is the real core of the tool, our field mapping tool. I'll quickly acknowledge below that we can also map subtables. The most common example is files and attachments, mapping from one record to the next. So I could just choose, again, the table I'm coming from. So let's say files and attachments to the contract, files and attachments. All the current mappings are below. And if I want to add additional mappings, I can. And for the case of subtables, all of the data, all of the fields in the subtable are individual fields. Even though the data is in the same table, they're still individual fields. So if I wanted the file name to map over, I have to choose the file name and then the file name. Then I would add the mapping. If I want to add, is public, I want that to map over, I would have to choose is public over here, and so on and so on. And you can add the subtable mapping. So the data will transfer from on the subtable from one record to the next. I'll quickly mention that we can also have the subtable data map all automatically. It will just push over, or you can choose the rows manually, right? Which individual line items from the subtable do you want to transfer? And finally, for the unique case of files and attachments, we can map the entire folder structure automatically, or you could choose to not map the folder structure. Finally, I'll just give a few other examples of common uses of field mapping. Request to contracts is the most common. You could have data map from contracts to contract if you often make contracts from other contracts. A common case is mapping from solicitation records to contract records. If you have the solicitations module, you can map from contracts to purchase orders. If you have the purchase order module, my point being, really any tables can map from one to the next, right? We can have any record types really map from one record to the other record. We just have to tell the system that those fields are connected and it should push over and it will happen automatically going forward. Now, this is the process of field mapping in Cobblestone Contract Insight.